Okay, so this is Talkaoke. If people don't know what it is, it's very simple. It's a pop-up talk show. We've got some wonderful people here today on the table of chat, including these three people that are willing to get to and come and have a seat on the table of chat and get this going. My name's Mikey. Let's find out who we've got around the table. What's your name?
Hercules.
Hercules.
Lucy. Bushra.
And anything you want to get the ball rolling with? Bushra, anything you'd like to just kick off this session with? Come and have a seat. Hello, come and get involved.
I don't know what is the topic, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. It certainly doesn't matter, but there is a topic, and Rick doesn't know.
Okay. The thing I'd like to talk about, I think, is that when you get people who are motivated, or you think they want to create a utopia, and they are driven by ideology, how come they're the most psycho people that you ever meet?
Okay.
In any time, it could be a tech revolution, could be charity, but when there's a mission, it's like actual individual responsibility is completely absolved for the bigger cause.
Right. Okay, so you're saying that people that have got a very strong vision of a utopia are actually normally psychos.
Yeah, because they...
You think it's dictatorial in a sense?
I'm going to turn the question on to you, Hercules. Do you think it's dictatorial when people have got this very strong vision?
Well, I mean, if it is people... I mean, strong visions progresses quite a lot of things. So without, if you kind of be passive about things, nothing changes.
Right.
So you do need strong ideas.
Right.
To what extent those ideas could be damaging? If you're like Trump or Brexit lot, then that's damaging. But if somebody is looking at progressively, then of course those changes are going to be for good. If you can make sure that change is going to happen, so there's not much more carbon emissions, and people are using renewable energy, and
so do we actually need a climate psycho in a way to actually, someone that's a real dictatorial asshole in a sense, that's actually going to make sure the climate change is addressed and that we do something about it?
I think, well, in a sense that anything that you say that's going to be against what the establishment wants is psychotic, and they'll put you in a straitjacket and throw away the keys.
Okay, we've got hang on a sec. I can see you're about to say something, but we've got a couple of new faces at the table. What's your name?
Rowan.
And
Rick.
And Lucy. Excuse me.
I'm wondering if we should actually turn it on its head slightly. Because is it that driven people go, have these mad ideas, or is it's only driven people, who it's only the psychos who are actually brave enough to have these ideas and carry them forward, or that they know that they're psychos and therefore they're channeling themselves into these ideologies as a way of rationalizing that or compensating for it. What else could they do?
Yeah, okay.
And also, what other purpose do they have other than being psychos? But I do think you don't have to be a psycho to change the world and create a revolution. You can be a super manipulator.
A super manipulator? What's the difference?
I don't think people need therapy if they feel like what they're doing is their own choice, even if maybe in the bigger picture they have been seduced into doing it.
Okay. All right, so we've got the psycho, we've got the super manipulator. Come and have a seat, come and get involved in this. We're talking about if you've got someone that's got a grand project, some big ideas, they want to change the world, do they have to be a psycho?
Yes, pretty much.
Could they be a super manipulator? So we've got Hercules, we've got Lucy, we've got Bushra. What's your name?
Carl.
And we've got Rowan and Rick, and what's your name?
Tony.
That's what we're talking about at the moment. We just got going. If you don't know what this is Talkaoke, freeform talk show, where we talk about anything. I don't think we've ever talked about this subject from this particular angle before. So that, yeah, there we are. So you're saying, yes, they have to be a psycho.
Pretty much, yes.
Pretty much, okay. Was there, I sort of sensed something from this side. Was there a point? Yep.
There's been like talks about, the people who are looking at society now, they think society is in the moment of change, because of the way technology is arriving. And this is again another side, it's similar to when the kind of revolution happened in France, like the whole kind of like progression to socialism and communism that happened, and fascism, if you like, in the early part of 20th century. I think we're on another cycle of change, which is going to be, requiring revolution. I mean, it is going to happen. It's going to be revolutionary ideas because we're changing. There is going to be drastic changes in terms of currency, like already Bitcoin and blockchain and things are changing the national currencies. And then the way that people are interacting is changes because people are traveling more and there's, borders are becoming redundant. I mean, but then you have like people like Trump who wants to put walls up, or Brexit who wants to put stronger borders, whereas like, it's against the trend that's happening. So the backward
so there's a kind of backlash going on.
Yeah, there's a backlash going on with that, and and Trump and ISIS, the Islamist fanatics, they're part of this, same side of the same coins. They are the backward tendency fighting each other to keep everything as it is. They don't want to go forward.
Okay.
In terms of us having to be part of the uprising, it's everybody's responsibility to be role models. There's nothing stopping us. We're talking about you need the psycho to change the world. Actually, you just need all of us to go, right, well, I'm not standing for this.
Yeah.
Perhaps we all need to be psychos.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I just ask how do we define psycho? It's an interesting one. But yeah, so basically, I guess it's different in terms of being able to look beyond the norm. But I also picked up sort of something about therapy. So this idea that we actually might need therapy because we're so different, if you like, because we've got this kind of very original thinking. Right.
Okay. So
I'm wondering if part of the problem is that so much of our population has delegated responsibility. Everybody wants to have a sense of personal power. They want to be empowered, but they don't want to take responsibility for the fact that they have a privilege or that they enjoy things because other people work really hard to put them in place. Or because other people or they can have things for cheaply because they're exploited. They don't want to face up to that.
So we want power, but we don't want responsibility.
Well, personally, I think that I've worked very hard to understand what power I have and what responsibilities I have. That's one of the reasons why I'm sitting around this table. And I would guess a lot of the other people around this table as well. We've all made choices that have brought you here today. But the general population, I don't know how aware they are. I think they're less aware than the general population were 10 or 20 years ago, of kind of like where things come from and the limits of resources.
Yours gave a little flicker there. So.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. When people say about empowered and being, I always think that's a bit of a PC buzzword, and it's normally the reverse of what actually they really mean. So when they're saying they're trying to empower people, they're really not. They're taking away something, but just telling you they're empowering you, and that seems to be the pattern over the last.
So when people say empowering, they're actually.
Generally, they're taking something away, but not telling you.
Yeah, they're actually saying, "Oh, you've got power, but actually, I'm going to be in control of it."
We all, I don't know how many people here are going to vote in. Is it on the 9th?
8th of June. Don't do it on the 9th because it'll be too late.
But So it's democracy in action, so we're told. But really, it's the same. It's different wings of the same bird, if I can use that expression.
Yeah.
So you're not really being empowered at all.
Yeah. And come to you in a second. Do people feel empowered? Just a show of hands. Do people feel empowered by a democratic process like the election?
No, it's not. That's our point. It's not a democratic process.
It's not a democratic process.
No.
Okay.
That's what you've been told it is.
Okay, hang on. Tony had his hand up for ages, so I'm going to come.
I think the Brexit vote, the referendum. I think a lot of people felt empowered by that, by voting to leave. That they felt that was unlike any previous recent election, where they felt it was a choice between the same old thing. Nothing's going to change. That was one of the reasons why Brexit happened, was because people felt
it was suddenly something about making a change,
empowered by it, and they felt like, well, this is actually my chance to really do something, say something, make a difference, shake things up. And
which they certainly did. Yeah. Hang on a sec, because we've got a queue here, which is everybody else did before you. Okay, I'll go to Bushra and then.
All I was going to say, sort of information, real information, is empowerment. And as you said, it's been obviously disused, misused, where it's just created shackles for the very people it's supposedly empowering. That's it. You can move on.
Okay.
Well, I think it's people get manipulated by the media quite easily. I mean, you can. The bigger the lies you tell people, the more believable it seems to be to them.
Yeah.
So, I think, what we got to do, probably, on the other side.
What is the biggest lie out there?
Well, same. If you think about Brexit or even Trump, they both are based on pack of lies, and the lies that people buy.
Yeah.
Because it's written on a big bus that passes by. We're gonna, they say NHS gonna have loads of money. We're gonna stop immigrants kind of crossing the border. It's all lies. I mean, building a wall is not gonna solve anything. We know that that's not the answer. All our jobs going to be taken away by AI and machines, not immigrants. There's all this bullshit that
so it seems to be the biggest the bigger the lie you can sell people, the more power you've got in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All I was going to say, the bigger the lie, the more difficult it is to contest.
Okay.
Especially by the most vulnerable people.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So it's worth if you're going to tell a lie, it seems it's worth telling as big a lie as you possibly can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kind of held accountable for the lie afterwards, because now that
Yeah.
So they said, the 350 million a week, and then and no one's like, obviously it was a lie, but no one's getting punished for it, and they're just so it's pushed under the carpet. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
So I think the problem is that everybody wants to get on with their lives and to kind of be to be fulfilled and have families and jobs and whatever else. And yes, there is a huge overhead, like we talked about this morning, about keeping informed. But there's also, I think, an additional overload of complete mistrust of political systems because they've been so abused, right? But that same mistrust tends to be pointed at, at factions, at individual politicians or individual policies. And I'm finding a lot of it noise, because actually what's really going on is that somehow there's a level of detachment that's got lost. Somehow now when politicians mudsling, they make it really personal. It's not about policies.
Yeah.
It's about personas. And it's really dangerous. And for me, the biggest lie right now is that climate change isn't the biggest and most urgent thing that we should be dealing with. That's my own personal opinion.
Is anyone even actually saying that? Because to be honest, I haven't really heard it even being mentioned or said or anything. The biggest lie, according to Lucy, is that climate change is not the most urgent thing that humanity needs to deal with.
I suspect she's actually right, and I think probably a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, a small amount of people made a lot of money out of the climate change and what they've been telling us. because they've been geoengineering as well for the last 20 years, and they haven't been telling people about that either. And that's also mixed up with the whole climate change thing.
Right. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to
it's your
say,
go, Bushra.
I guess because I believe in technology as progress, and back in the day I did a biochemistry degree, so I'm quite pro GM because actually it solves a lot of climate issues. However, Monsanto doesn't. But yeah.
Okay, I mean, earlier on we were talking about this kind of skepticism about science, which is actually, when it's kind of emotionally whittled down, is a skepticism about institutions and corporations.
Science for gods. Scientists, I think, over the last sort of like 150 years have been almost put up there as like gods and almost become infallible because we've been brought up on the Descartesian idea of we can prove this, therefore it's correct and it's true. And actually, a lot of the stuff the scientists are now saying, they're sort of making up, or they're actually being bought by corporations to say certain things. They've lost their independence. So how do we trust them? What?
Okay. Is people's faith in science diminishing?
I kind of put it on its head. I say I wish scientists were deified a bit more. I think the problem is most of the world doesn't listen to scientists. Like, evidence doesn't work in arguments because people don't like get the mechanism of science and things. There is a lot of corporate bias, but it's nowhere. It doesn't actually. It's in quite specific areas. I think a lot of pure science is pretty untainted because it's not valuable. Like, pure science that actually would make a difference isn't funded enough. I almost wish there was more corporate sponsorship in like pure science, like, you know, physics, fusion energy, that sort of stuff. It needs more corporate input.
Okay. Where do we want to go in this conversation? Do we want to go to talking about science and evidence? And that seems to be the way that at least this side of the table wants to take it. Are we happy to go in this direction?
What about talking about you know, the possibility of singularity, life extension, and immortality? Is that something
that again?
You know, sort of life extension, potentially immortality, and, you know, like being able to download your yourself into a machine that's going to make you last forever.
Okay.
Is that something that people want to? You know, what people think about that.
We're just going to hold that point. You talked about the singularity, about life extension, living forever downloaded onto a hard disk or whatever the future thing is. Final thought from you, Bushra, before you go.
Okay, final thought is actually about what you said, but it covers science. There's an art project I'm doing, but I like to use real science, and there's been some recent research published just in January from NASA, and space is very hostile in every respect for the human, except they found that at the end of the chromosome, the telomeres are being extended. And we know from science that shortening is related to aging.
So what you're saying, in space travel, the astronauts' telomeres are being extended?
So, no, they're extended in space. So we can extrapolate that, we're going to live longer.
Okay, so, all right, okay. Is that your final thought?
That was my final thought.
Okay. That's quite a technical one, and no one's here to explain what that... Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
So, actually, I thought I'd, if it's okay with you, just set a little bit of context.
Yep.
So, one of the reasons that I'm here at this event is because it used the phrase human being from the original 60s gathering. And when many years ago, I actually picked up a comic written, co-authored by Timothy Leary. And one of the things that he was really keen on was that the human destiny isn't just on this planet, and that it isn't just in the finite lives that we have. And he came up with the acronym SMILE, which is space migration, increased intelligence, and life extension.
Right.
And he really believed in this tech utopia.
Right.
And one of the things that I find really distressing is I see so much attention being paid to Not so much to life extension, but to to things that don't, to war, to incredibly destructive technologies.
Yeah.
And I'm going, excuse me, but there's space out there. We've forgotten that there's space out there. So, life extension's really important, but I'd also like to bring
increased intelligence and space migration. I think the organizer of this, James, would be incredibly pleased that Timothy Leary has been mentioned and that we've actually somehow quite accidentally gone on message that's why I'm talking to this microphone, so that everyone can hear. So we're actually on message for it. We're like the broken clock that's right twice a day. We're sort of talking about the right thing just for now. So let's just. Do people believe in this vision? This kind of what has been called earlier on in the day, techno-optimism. This kind of.
It feels like, it does instinctively feel like it correlates with everything that's happened over the last 100 or so years. Like it seems to correlate with the progress. Like we are living longer than we were. That's an objective fact. We are exploring space more than we were. That's an objective fact. So it's not impossible to extrapolate forward and say, yeah, we're going to live much longer. We're going to explore more of space. When they've got rockets that are costing a couple of £100 to launch instead of a couple of million, then why could we not just all take holidays or live elsewhere?
Okay, so you think it's all possible?
Yeah. I think it's naive to think otherwise. I just think it's a case of resource allocation, which is what Lucy sort of touched on. It's like all the money's been spent on weapons and not on the same chemistry that goes into weapons could be put into rocket research or something.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who just said, look, the problem with the 20th century is we put the nukes on the wrong end of the rockets.
Right. Yeah. Give us a final thought.
Well, thanks for the conversations, guys. Cheers.
Do you believe in the SMILE idea that space migration, increased intelligence, life extension, is that the fate of the human race?
Well, I think we came from the stars anyway, so we're going to go back to the stars at some point.
Okay. Return from whence we came, back to the stars. It's inevitable. Thank you. Okay, so where do we go with this conversation? We're talking about the legacy of Timothy Leary.
Maybe it's a bit of a tangent, but you're talking about life extension. I'm just thinking about how do we actually just feel comfortable with our life as it is and feel okay about death as well. And ways that technology can actually make us feel better about death.
Death acceptance is much cheaper than life extension, I imagine.
Yes, yeah. It's because we don't accept death that we think we have to extend our life. But if we accepted that death is just a part of living, then we wouldn't want to extend it.
Okay.
Well, I disagree. I think what we have, by the time people acquire enough knowledge about the world, they reach a level of maturity and understanding, then their body goes into self-destruct.
Right.
And so why do we have to kind of succumb to this disease of aging when we could actually solve it? I mean, if we kind of see it as a disease, and when people, if we could even live another 10 years, imagine Einstein or some of our greatest scientists lived another 10 years or 20 years, this world would be completely different. I mean, if we had all our resources put in, getting some of our scientists to live longer, they would solve issues and problems, most of our economical dilemma and political and social and health issues will be resolved.
Okay. We're talking, we've got new faces table, we're talking life extension versus death acceptance. Should we be focusing on extending people's life, or Tony's talking about technology which actually allows people to accept more the fact that they're going to die, that they're getting older, that they're going to shuffle off of this mortal coil. But Hercules is saying, all that knowledge, all that wisdom that we're losing every time someone dies, can we not live just even a little bit longer to make good use of that? So that's the conversation we're having right now. What's your name?
Justin.
Justin, welcome. We've got Rowan, we've got Rick, we've got Tony, Hercules, Lucy and Mikey. Possibly Lawrence is going to come and join in. So we're talking about life extension versus death acceptance. Yeah, you'll pick up the pieces as we go along. Okay, so yeah, Rowan?
I'll say this much. I think, imagine being at the point of death. Just say, for whatever contrived reason, you're at the point of death. I can't imagine most people would say, okay, yeah, just switch me off now. If you were just say not like healthy and you could have some more years ahead of you. I don't think most people would choose to die unless there was perhaps perhaps they have their own beliefs and theories about what happens afterwards. I don't really know. But I just feel like there's always more that you'd want to do and see and so on. And I understand, like, you can accept that you'd be at a certain place, but it's just like, I feel it's just a bit of a cop-out. I just want to do more.
Okay. Does death acceptance involve being convinced about an afterlife?
So it's like saying, I just want a little bit more, just another couple of years. But then, of course, you just want another couple of years, another 10 years. It never ends. It's like anything else. It's like an addiction, isn't it? Addiction to life.
Are you addicted to life?
Well, I think it's good to come to an acceptance that we're ultimately going to die. We are, aren't we? Yeah.
Yeah. Hang on. Yeah. Go on.
I was talking to a friend of mine, which is a Buddhist, or believe in that. So the Buddhist philosophy is that you die and you reincarnate. So you're they're striving the same, like they want to live eternity, and I think so. That's one way of living eternity, and there's other ways to live eternity for live and proper with the scientific method. So the end goal is pretty much the same as those guys who believe in living in eternity in reincarnational.
I mean, do you think you will go through some kind of psychic or spiritual change to extend your life?
I think it's definitely that. I mean, people have talked about how Singularity will actually bring certain elements of spirituality back into people, and because that this fact that we living to be able to explore the universe in its entirety, and it's never ending. When you're talking infinity, there's like so many things to discover. I mean, this planet is just minuscule amount of that knowledge.
I think beyond the planet. Lawrence.
I think like beyond the realms of the consciousness that your physical body has at the moment. I had a really heated debate with someone the other day who interestingly identifies themselves as a Buddhist, but they got really angry with me for suggesting that we should be working towards technology where you can download your consciousness and then pass it on, or have it exist in alternate realities. I mean, I do a lot of work with virtual reality stuff, and I've sat there thinking, well, maybe I'm not religious in any way, but maybe we are approaching something like a constructed heaven. So you could potentially think about, if I can now make a world that is shaped the way I want it to be, and allows me to experience the things that I want to experience. Maybe I'm creating my own heaven.
Can I just ask, why were you surprised because the Buddhists got angry?
Yeah, I was really surprised. She said, You've misunderstood what consciousness is. You've misunderstood what what you should be aiming to achieve. And she's like, because I said to her, if the option came tomorrow to download my consciousness and have it live forever, and you could place it into whatever space and time and sensation, then people could live forever. And it seemed to really jar against what she was aiming for. But.
So in a way, we need a Buddhist. Any Buddhists around the table?
Okay.
What's the objection to downloading your consciousness from a Buddhist perspective?
Well, you can't.
Right. Okay.
But the thing is, it's like, look, there is a divine essence, and you cannot replicate that. So I'm speaking as a crypto Buddhist.
Right.
In that I really understand Buddhism, but I find some of the tenets of it a little bit shaky. I actually personally believe that reincarnation is something that you're supposed to do in your own lifetime. It's actually it's a tribal thing about becoming human, having rites of passage, and becoming a responsible and powerful being.
Right.
You know.
So you actually reincarnate whilst being alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And there are people who are talking about this in quite serious terms of like, hang on a minute, have we misunderstood? You know. So I can understand both her anger and Buddhism, by the way. It isn't supposed to suppress emotions. It's supposed to let you ride over them.
I wasn't expecting her to be like completely cool.
Sorry, Tony's itching to speak.
Yeah, I would say as well the Buddhist perspective is kind of coming from an acceptance of kind of the darker aspects of human experience as well as the lighter ones, and that's all part of human experience, and to kind of create this construct which is just all good and everything's lovely. That's just a false, in the kind of Buddhist perspective, that's just a false construct, and that's not what life or human experience is about.
Okay, so the Buddhist is not trying to deny the bad stuff or just sweep over it. But what are they trying to make the world better, or they're just accepting it as it is?
Well, it's coming to an acceptance, feeling comfortable, I suppose, being okay with the bad stuff, because the bad stuff is just part of being human.
Does it always have to be?
Well, in a way, you need the bad stuff to have the good stuff.
Okay.
There is this concept in Buddhism of avoiding suffering, but I wonder whether it's actually a mistranslation and it's actually just avoiding complexity. And I think that...
hang on.
So, from my understanding, Hindu philosophy comes out quite well in this, because it comes out in a very kind of like, well, everything in every moment is being created and being destroyed.
Right.
It's a quantum state.
Right.
And in order to have the creation, you have to have the destruction, because there is an infinite number of worlds, but there's a finite number of worlds that can appear at any particular one time. If the Christian view is that you die, you go to heaven, you're making room for the next generation. It's all about getting out of the way so that your children can inherit.
Yeah.
And you, as an individual, you're just a tool to perpetuate, God's creation. Blah, yeah.
Lawrence.
I think it's interesting that what the conversation that I started with my Buddhist friend had no sort of religious or philosophical overtones to it at all. It was purely a kind of hypothetical.
Right.
If tomorrow I could take that thing that's going on in the corner there, and rather than have to strap into it with my face, I can remove whatever makes me from inside of me, consciousness, and download it into the machine and do the same thing. That was my actual proposition to her.
Yeah.
She was the one who took it down the route of philosophy, ethics, morality. I was presenting a hypothetical to her. I mean, she said to me, "You're being simplistic. You haven't considered anything about what humanity is and what it is to be human." And the question I posed back to her was, well, this hypothetical poses that question. If this were possible, it would alter what being human was, or what humanity can be perceived as, if this were possible. But I think it was the sheer fact that it was a kind of aimless hypothetical that, as you said, we can't do it, of course, that frustrated her. It was interesting because I never actually placed any sort of religious or belief-based connotation onto the argument, but it just came about naturally.
Will we ever be able to do it? And if so, would you actually give it a go?
I think I would, if I was a bit older. I mean, we came to this table and we said it was life and death. If I'm on my deathbed and someone says, "Oh, can you download your consciousness and live forever in an infinite world?" Yeah, sure, why not?
Okay. Oh, hang on. Yeah.
So I mean, there is the idea of transhumanism, which is like basically transcending the physical, biological existence to the next level. So it's a bit like reincarnation in a sense, in the Buddhist sense, that you're transcending to, it's an ascension to another level. And our physical, biological existence on this planet, although it's been successful, I mean, humans been great in manipulating this planet and creating cities and civilizations, but really the goal is greater than that. To achieve this transcending to the next level requires that jump to be able to go to other planet, to explore the universe in its entirety.
I mean, in a way, it's easier to send a hard disk or a compact flash card to another planet than it is a human being and keep them intact.
Yeah, I mean, we are not. I mean, we cannot kind of recreate the kind of geosphere in a tin can up in space and let people live. We have to change our biological constructs through genetical engineering, all kind of other augmentation into computers and hardware in order to be able to survive in those kind of conditions.
Okay, I mean, talking about reincarnation and transcendence, I'm actually not going to. Well, I might reincarnate into a speaker on the outside of the table, but I'm actually going to shuffle off and allow the younger generation to take my place, which is Rowan.
Not that much younger.
Yeah, young enough to inject some freshness into this. I'm going to go. I'm going to bid farewell. It's been a pleasure, and I accept that it's now time for me to go and time for Rowan to take my place. So let's just keep this going.
Just before I jump in the middle where I'm not allowed to have opinions, I just wanted to say that there's a surprising amount of numbers of models of consciousness, some of which might become testable in the foreseeable future given the sort of like fidelity of technology. And I think the idea you were talking about is I personally feel it's not impossible. But anyway, let me just jump in there.
You don't think it's impossible to actually create consciousness in silicone or in some kind of technology?
But there has been some theses about consciousness. I mean, there's guys who have been working on that, and like once you have computers or that can be trained, same as a child growing in a neural network. Potentially that the computers, that kind of artificial intelligence can develop consciousness because it will have similar. I mean, this idea of us having soul as a kind of some people believe in soul and they think, well, based on that, it's some kind of divine sort of interference that people have soul. But if consciousness could be generated through this level of interaction with the universe, learning from things that the intelligent machine could see, then it is conceivable and potentially very possible that machine will be conscious.
How could we test it? I mean.
Well, I think until we actually enact that, we cannot know for sure. I mean, it's not something that we could simulate, I don't think.
There have been experiments recently where a piece of software was able to distinguish that it wasn't another piece of software. So
Self-awareness.
It showed a very, very limited awareness of what was not itself. Self-awareness, consciousness, self-inquiry, sense of self. There's so many different layers, and I think to a certain point, if as we're exploring outer space, we do need to be better exploring inner space as well, especially if we're talking about artificial intelligence that we're relying on to make decisions for us. And there's one. I'm going to throw this into the arena.
Go for it.
Because one of the criticisms that has been put forward of the idea of singularity and life extension is that it's actually a male escape fantasy. And because what it's about is running away from nature which is which is traditionally gendered as female. And in nature, you die when you die. You die because the animal gets you. You die because the food's running out. You die because it's your time. And back in history, women were the ones who who generally speaking were the ones who decided which children would live, because you had finite resources, and they would decide, which livestock, that kind of thing. They would be the ones making the decision about what would live and die. And that somehow there's some kind of, I don't necessarily believe this, but there's somehow some kind of, in the male psyche, some kind of memory of this kind of women having this power over life and death.
Do you reckon, Toby, does that kind of line up with what you were, Tony, sorry, does that kind of line up with what you were saying about people should accept and not run away from?
It does, so to some extent it does, in terms of, coming to an acceptance of our mortality, I guess. And I think it's not just about coming to an acceptance of death. It's also just accepting the kind of the darker side of ourselves, and what you were saying about, rather than like thinking of extending life and so on, which is kind of this idea of escape and kind of trying to get somewhere else, go somewhere else, another realm or another planet or outer space or whatever, but rather actually looking more deeper inside ourselves and exploring that way. And then when we do that, the chances are we find things we don't like very much, and we're like, oh, it's all a bit uncomfortable, and we don't want to go there. So then it's like, oh no, I can't go there, and it's to get back into escape mode. But so it's that really actually kind of, what can you sort of touch that's deeper inside, and actually coming to feel more comfortable with that real uncomfortableness.
Hercules?
I think there is this kind of tendency to think suffering is part of, human existence. I mean, evolution itself has happened in order to kind of to next generation do better. And like you said, maybe it's a feminine or female thing, but I disagree. I think we are in a moment that we could interfere with evolution. We can leapfrog evolutionary process quite massively. Things that would have taken millions of years to change. For us to grow wings would take maybe another million years before we could be able to grow wings. But in very short period of time, we'll be able to grow wings, genetically engineer ourselves, or be able to live under the sea in the water.
Is that what you'd do if you could, is grow wings?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, if we needed to, maybe we go to another planet that is better to have wings, or is another planet that you got to be living on. I mean, this planet, in fact, is mostly ocean. We'll be better off to live in the sea than on the land, really.
Yeah, it does seem like a good point. So why don't we have
I would
gills?
say it's probably easier for us to genetically re-edit our chromosomes to live underwater than it is for us to move to another planet. I think that's a less difficult challenge.
I think that's a different problem. I think this planet is in danger at any moment in time. Could be hit by natural disaster.
Yeah.
Could be diseases coming here that we cannot eradicate. Could come from something falling off the sky, from another asteroid that could have some kind of virus that could kill everyone. So in order to kind of safeguard human species, it's very necessary, and it's for us to be able to go to other. I mean, even not only this solar system, we have to go further afield to other, because it's not even sure. We're not even sure what could happen. If there is a kind of supernova, massive, hits this solar system, if it's strong enough, could eradicate or
hold
everything.
So you're saying to perpetuate our own existence, we need to really think big, not just other planets, but.
Yeah, I think we got to go further afield. I mean, that's just a stepping stone. And we've got to do that really quickly.
And so, Mikey's saying, if we wanted to expand the species, we could just occupy the ocean using genetic technology, but that's still just shifting the problem down the line. It's not actually solving the problem. Lucy.
As a part-time mermaid, I would also like to remind everybody here that the ocean is already full. Despite the fact that we've depleted it of a lot of fish, there are some really exciting projects, that are extending aquaculture and that are kind of using the ocean resources in more responsible ways. At the same time, the Australian government has just backtracked on a whole lot of climate commitments and is about to allow huge-scale coal mining, which is taking coal by ship, which is then going to ship the coal past the Great Barrier Reef, which is almost on its last legs, is showing sign of dying, to coal-fired power stations in Bangladesh, the building of which is going to require huge land clearances, and also getting rid of a place called the Sundarbans, which is a tiger reserve. 2 million people rely on their livelihoods, and also the very nature of it acts as like a water filtration system, but also it protects that part of the world from the severe flooding. It actually acts as like
Why has this been allowed to happen? What's gone on for that state of affairs?
You tell me. I think this is the thing. It's like they've gone, well, Australia needs jobs and India needs energy. And so, in some way, they're basically using thinking from 50 years ago to solve, or 100 years ago to solve a problem today.
So they're just behind the times, basically. Mikey,
well, I think that's my most...
mildly.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to go back to Tony's thing about accepting death and accepting a natural process. Should we also be accepting the death and extinction of the Great Barrier Reef? Is it that it's lived its time?
Fair point. Yes.
And now we can accept that it's time, and the Great Barrier Reef itself should be accepting
by that extent,
that it's about to die.
Like animals as well, should we accept the polar bear and whatever else to just...
No, that's a totally different type of acceptance. That's kind of a passive acceptance, I suppose. Where we should, an example of where we should be active, we would be being passive, as opposed to the acceptance that I'm talking about, which is more of an inner thing, accepting what is part of human experience, which is suffering, death, and so on. So it's a very different thing. I don't think you can make the comparison.
So sort of like Lucy was saying, we should be exploring within as well as.
I mean, we are actually living in another age of extinction. I mean, this is a great extinction. I mean, something like 70% of species on this planet are being extinct through the processes that are. I mean, some of it is not only man-made; it's to do with climate changes that are happening, probably through human interference. But it is. I mean, there are a lot of things. I mean, some valuable kind of plants and animals are being eradicated from the planet. I mean, this could have significant implication in medicine and all kind of other things. And plus, preserving this kind of thing is very important. So. Sorry, you. Go ahead.
Mikey.
What about, I'm just sort of like trying to link these two subjects together. What about downloading all of these species, or just keeping their DNA for a more...
Sort of until we can bring them back.
Exactly. Well, I mean, should we actually be doing, rather than extending our own lives or downloading our own consciousness, perhaps we should be downloading the genes or having a way to almost kind of nest these species, incubate or hibernate these species until until we as a species actually can, be a little bit less polluting.
I mean, is anyone working on this? Is there any? Let me just skip back now.
I think it's totally. I think one of the things that is happening, the valuable things about the DNAs are being lost from the animals or plants that are becoming extinct, is because some of those have implication when we are talking about CRISPR or like genetical engineering,
right.
Some of these properties that these animals have in their genetical makeup could help us to survive in hostile climates, learning about them, or grow plants that would grow in hostile climates, and things like that. So definitely keeping DNA banks of every living things, and also things that are probably passed away. If we have resurrecting, we can reconstruct DNA from bits of bones and all kind of things that have been.
You're saying we could get dinosaurs?
Sorry?
Could we get dinosaurs?
We could actually, probably.
Lucy. Sorry. And I'll come back to Tony.
Well, there are seed banks, and funnily enough, one of the biggest is out in Hawaii, and it was Terence McKenna and his brother. And I don't know if any of you've heard of Terence McKenna.
Tell us who these are.
So he's an ethnobotanist who looks at the relationship between human beings and plants. And he wrote a book that was hugely influential in the 90s called Food of the Gods. And he postulated that human consciousness actually arose because we started eating the mushrooms in the dung of other animals. And that's why, that's why we became the most successful apes.
But so what's the implication of that, though? That life's just a big hallucination? Or?
No. That as apes, we had this fantastic adaptation to be able to take on that new piece of information, that we started to grow new bits of brains, but also that in the process, we created something. We created ourselves, but we also created a whole lot of problems for ourselves as well. Because along with that came the idealism. And there is also another theory of his, which is that our brains were actually functioned quite differently back then. That actually, there wasn't particularly subconscious, and things like fairies and elves and that kind of thing. Because your brain hadn't learnt that there's a hard difference between reality and what's going on inside your, and the imagination, that all of these things were actually real. And there's been some beautiful kind of like almost early stage fan fiction where people have written about what might have triggered that.
Yeah.
When did fairy as a concept die? The place under the hill where you go and you have a meal and you come back and 300 years have passed. That trope is in so many different cultures. There's all these different common cultural stories. So there's that one in Hawaii. There's a couple of other huge seed banks.
Seed banks are kind of analogous to what we've just been talking about. Is could we and should we preserve DNA from animals that we think might be extinct, so that when we reach a level of technological and social maturity, we can bring them back?
Yeah.
And Lisa was just telling us, there's actually the seed banks, which is not a million miles from that idea. It's basically the same idea, just with plants instead of animals, because we know we can bring plants back. So I guess we could develop that further. But
there are two or three things that they hit. One of which is some of the seeds require very specific environments to germinate. So if you don't have the environments or the plant pollinators or the specific animal that cracks the shell, you are screwed.
Yeah.
There are some nuts that can only germinate if there's a particular parrot who can crack the shell.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of stuff.
So would we have to create artificial, like somebody earlier was talking about, there's that little drone that's flying around, and it's like the size of a big insect. It's not impossible to imagine a bumblebee-sized thing in 5 years' time or something. Could we make a fake bumblebee
people are having to work?
Yeah.
But you see,
which is kind of a sad state of affairs, but it's
well, to me, it's like that should be the last possible backup. It's like with fracking. Yeah. It's like fracking is what you do in 10,000 years' time when you can't get any other oil. Not to just feel a bit more secure in the world of having your own fuel supply because you can't be asked to sort out international relations.
Yeah.
So yes, to answer your point, yes, absolutely, we should be saving as much as we can because stuff is vanishing in front of our very eyes. But it's not the same with that. It doesn't work without the environments.
And my question then would be, well, I mean, that's what you've got to say, but my question is, like, what would you prioritize as well? I'm kind of curious about...
Well, I was just passing by and I heard you mention Terence McKenna, and he's one of my favorite minds. And it's interesting that you mentioned the stoned ape theory. And at first, like, it sounds really crazy that, like, because, you know, there's a taboo around mushrooms, and then when people think about mushrooms, they say, like, oh, you're just hallucinating, you know, flying pink elephants. And then when you tell them, no, actually, you know what, apes, evolution started because we started taking mushrooms, people will start, you know, majority will start laughing at you. But if you look at the interest, how they call it, the minds that they influence our current, so like, you know, this era, they are mostly the minds that they have been influenced by psychedelic substances, and these minds are actually, they are in a way more developed, and then they are in a way that almost feels like when you look at Steve Jobs, when you look at Albert Hoffman, when you look at Terence McKenna, they sound like they actually tapped into a next phase of evolution. And even if mushrooms didn't start our evolution, it is actually, it has, the psychedelics are starting a new phase, a new evolution phase right now. And in 100 and 1,000 years' time, they will say that back in those days, psychedelics started a new phase, a new revolution, a new evolution.
They'll be like the next internet, or bigger than that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great book. Yeah, Food of the Gods.
Does anyone like share or disagree with that kind of view that the psychedelics do something more than just give us a bit of a trip, or like?
It's more, definitely more than that. Like, I mean, there's for example, a lot of people that take, like, you know, DMT especially, they report similar things, as I said earlier. And if, let's say, if people were reporting different stuff, then we could call it hallucination. But if you have millions of people reporting same entities and similar experiences, then there is something that we need to question. And one of the, for example, experiences is like waking up in a lab and feeling that you've been abducted by aliens, and you see these aliens with massive eyes, and they look like mantis beings. I personally experienced it, and it feels like they are reprogramming you. And there is a theory that maybe they're actually reprogramming your DNA. And people that experience that, they never feel the same. And I didn't feel the same, and I feel really changed in a good way. Sometimes it's hectic, like, I mean, I probably ticked every single box for schizophrenia, but I'm doing all right. And Terence McKenna used to say the same. Yeah. So it is doing something, there is something beyond our understanding, but we're getting there because science and technology and you know, shamans are working together. That's why we live in a really interesting era.
So, come join the conversation. We're talking about hallucinogenics and the potential they had for our sort of evolutionary development. Lucy, what do you like to add to this? Come and join
it's interesting that you mentioned alien.
Are you here tomorrow?
Alien abduction, because before I was, when I was talking about our kind of a possible more primitive consciousness and you know, the imaginary beings, we could actually sort of see them and talk to them and interact with them. It's really interesting that the stories of people being taken by fairies ended just when the stories of people being abducted by aliens started.
So do we just shift the cultural sort of meme?
And I think what's going on is there's something really deep wired in our psyche that needs some kind of other being or mechanism to become slightly bigger than ourselves.
It sounds a bit almost like Freudian.
Excuse me.
No, it's a bit... No?
Sorry, who? Sorry, I have huge problems with the Freudian interpretation of most of the human psyche. And that's a different conversation, which I'd love to have with some of you guys down the pub sometime, but just had to flag that.
Awesome. New face around the table. I wonder if you could just introduce yourself for us.
Oh, hi. My name's Ian. I deal in sound mostly. Music. I'm a composer. I make records. And I'm just interested in the sort of the possibilities of sound and music.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got this is Talkaoke. My name's Rowan, and we've got Tony, we've got Hercules, Lucy, Mikey, Batu, and Christina. And another chap who's just joined us. Can you give us your name?
I've just joined the conversation, so I have no idea what the topic is.
What's your name?
My name is Dave Lally, and I've been at all 17 of these, and I remember the karaoke in the very early ones.
There you go. You must recognise Mikey. Yeah. Great. Well, so yeah, welcome to this edition. And we've just been talking about, amongst other things, sort of the role of hallucinogenics in our potential evolution and what common traits people have while on hallucinogenic substances. One thing that seems to come up a lot is abduction sort of ideas or feelings of there being greater presences, and it used to be fairies, and then one day after sci-fi came about, it became aliens, and what else it might be.
I wonder if the sort of current trope of that form is joining ISIS, going off to join ISIS or something like that, or being recruited at least by terrorists seems to be a very sort of common concern right now.
It's a hallucination
amongst our young people.
Let's go to Batu and then.
Yeah, like for example, if you look at like Freudian theory, and think about psychedelic experience, then you will say that what you're tripping is actually your subconscious mind, working and creating these experiences. But from my personal experience, for example, I've never been into Mayan and Aztec art, but once I had a really crazy experience with a shaman, and we work with some powerful substance, and I felt like I was taking into a different world where I saw these shapes that exactly like Mayan and Aztec art, and I was convinced that Mayans and Aztec, they visited this world as well, and they were trying to create it with their art, and I knew for a fact that I wasn't experiencing because I had it in my subconscious mind, because I wasn't into art, Mayan art, but I just experienced it. And actually, the interesting thing is, after the whole trip, I talked to the shaman, and he was like, how did you find it, blah, 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 and I told him about this experience, and he was like, I'm not surprised that you saw the Mayan and Aztec. I was like, why? He was like, because this substance is from Mexico. And I was like, well, from the land where Mayan and Aztecs, and then from the plants that they use. So there is something, we just don't understand what it is, but I think we need to, instead of looking for aliens up in the space or in the deep sea, I think we need to do more research about the mind, because we don't even know if this is reality. So I think we need to do more research and understand how this works, and then,
Is anyone else unsure that this is reality?
I'm just thinking about this connection between sort of seeing things that are sort of otherworldly or alien or the other kind of thing. It's really it's things that are kind of actually inside ourselves that we just haven't paid attention to. It's just parts of ourselves that are there, they're in our past, but we've ignored them because we're kind of trying to run away from them. And then that kind of in these moments, they reappear, or they're kind of saying to us, hello, look at me, sort of thing. Pay a bit of attention to me.
Yeah, please, Christina.
I think that reality is what you believe in ultimately. It's all in your beliefs. And when you work with psychedelics or any plant medicine, it all depends on the level of your consciousness who you're dealing with. Like consciousness as higher self, not the mind. But more open you are to higher self, who you are, more you perceive, more realities you can see. Because many European people who go there, they go for visions. But these visions, they come from the mind. The other realities cannot be perceived through the mind. So then you start seeing aliens or anything what your mind can see. But if you're going further, you're going further. But this takes other work, that sort of pre-work before it takes psychedelics. Yeah, to expand the consciousness, expand your high consciousness, and then you're going further, and then you actually start perceiving different realities. But then you're pretty much stating you don't want to see the visions, because the visions, they're limiting. So you're going fully with your other sensations.
Mikey,
Well, no, it's just a question. What are the
other sensations?
What are the other sensations, the other consciousnesses? I've not been a part or not experienced it, but is it possible to explain to somebody that's very much on planet Earth?
That's a good point, because it sometimes talking about this subject can sound very extremely abstract to people who might not have had an experience with things.
I think the biggest one is, the mind tries to put everything in a system, yeah? So, we want to have things pretty or not pretty, but the pattern. Yeah, but one of the biggest, I think, senses is actually going beyond, going into chaos, because your mind cannot comprehend chaos, So how do you go into something that is chaotic, because it's not the visions, it's more the sensation. When people start working with the beings of light, like ascended masters, when people channel.
Wait, beings like who, sorry?
Like ascended masters, people who lived and then they got the ascendancy, got the enlightenment, and then they left this reality with the physical body. Because there's different work when you can turn your physical body into light and just go.
And this is the thing that has been done?
Yeah.
by?
Yeah, there are beings done. I mean, you can find information. Yeah,
Right.
you can find.
Where would we start? Like, give us a starting point.
So what you're saying might sound, how do you call? Might sound crazy, but like we just need to consider this. Like just 200, 300 years ago, we believed that the world was flat. And if you say that the world is actually round and that it's not the sun that goes around the earth, it's actually the earth that goes around the sun, you will get your head chopped off. And now we live in an era where if you say the world is flat, people will laugh at you. And again, maybe what you're saying now might sound really funny, but maybe in 200 years' time, that's what we will be believing.
There's some basketball players who I think still believe the world is flat, which I came across quite recently, which is a bit scary.
There is actually a flat Earth society. You can Google it. Yeah, it's the repeat of the old one of the 50s, when astronomers would be secretly brought in disguise because they'd be murdered in front of the flat earthers. So there's still a modern flat Earth society. So, yeah, and they just don't believe the moon landing or anything.
Yeah. Let me just say hello to our new friend here. Can you give us your name, please?
Sure, my name's Youssef.
Youssef.
Yes.
Good to meet you, Youssef. So this is Talkaoke, a free-form talk show. We can talk about anything. Right now we're on the topic of psychedelics and their kind of involvement, amongst other things, with our evolution and what happens when you are on one of these sort of transcendent experiences. What is that doing something in what we call reality, or is it taking you to a whole other place altogether? So around the table we have David, Tony, Ian, Hercules, Lucy, Mikey, Batu, and Christina. And my name's Rowan. So yeah, welcome. Who wanted to? Hercules. I haven't heard from you in a while.
I mean, the other area that we could think about is multiverse. I mean, like,
is what,
time travel and multiverses, because like, I mean, it's proven that they have at least mathematically proven that it is possible to time travel, and then it's also mathematically conceivable that there are multiverses and there are alternate reality to ours. But maybe one of the visions that we have is that we open this gateway to these other universes or this other reality when we take drugs, perhaps, or it makes it possible for us to peek into those other worlds. That could be one of those. Yeah.
Okay, let me just get our introduction from our new face here. Can you just give us your name?
Ignacio Tovar.
Ignacio Tovar.
That's right.
Excellent, there we go. Okay, so welcome to our table. We're talking about, amongst other things, hallucinogenics, and now about how they might be a gateway to multiple universes or involve time travel. Let me just I haven't heard from Lucy and Mikey in a while, so let me just hear from Lucy and then come around.
Mikey mentioned people running off and joining ISIS.
Yeah.
A while back, and I just wanted to pick up that thread slightly, because I think one of the reasons that psychedelics are having a renaissance is because they're a rite of passage. They are a way of becoming. The people who want to demonize these substances say, it's peer pressure that people are forced into taking these things. And it's just like, well, no, I think there's something quite hardwired into ourselves, into the human experience, that we might want to do something that's a leap of faith. And at the same time, I'm concerned that if we don't have something else in place in our culture, then it's not that we're
talking about like escapism in a way. Like,
but it's also, it's like there's something that happens. There's a change that happens in your brain when you go through a rite of passage. And the main point I wanted to make is that actually psychedelics aren't the only way to change your brain. You can do it by extreme physical practice. You can do it through diet. You can do it through waking yourself up at weird times. You can do it through chanting. I mean, you could have would you all like to have a psychedelic experience right now?
Ooh, well, that would be a bit different. Is this going to get us arrested?
No.
Okay.
No.
Should we
so
do
if
this?
you close your eyes,
right, everyone up for this? Okay.
Yeah, close your eyes and just very gently, just rub your eyeballs, and then maybe press slightly. And some of you might actually see lights and patterns. Yeah. So that's the very, very first inkling of what would happen if you if you actually used a substance to unlock those parts of your brain.
So
and I think
inducing visuals and
exactly.
things like that.
Is that you? So you just had a shared hallucination. Yeah. Thank you.
But did we all share the same thing? That's the question.
I mean, for me, taking psychedelic substances, it's much. To me, what it revealed was not a deeper reality, but how the reality that I lived in was constructed by my own mind. It wasn't sort of revealing anything other than what was going on in my head, in a way, a different view about what was how my brain actually worked to create this world, which I believe to be reality. It's not the same as a kind of higher consciousness, almost like a lower consciousness. It's about understanding how, when it doesn't all work in a seamless way, then you can understand how the different mechanisms that create perception actually fit together in your normal everyday experience.
So is it like seeing behind the scenes of like some movie being made? You see the sets and you see as opposed to just seeing the final product. So would that be an analogy, like your? Yeah,
in a way, or like just there's there's a little bit of a gap, between the curtain, or it's like it's not quite as seamless as like sometimes, like for example, taking LSD, when your eyes move, you don't get like just a seamless experience of like I'm scanning this reality, but like a series of still images that sometimes superimpose on top of each other, and you realize that. To me, what that made me realize is that my brain is stitching together a reality from this sense data, which is coming from my retina. That's not actually. I'm not actually getting like. Anything that is a external reality, I'm just constructing this in my head, if you see what I mean.
So in a weird way, it sounds almost like you're de-hallucinating, because you're actually getting the real picture, not the constructed reality, which is a constant hallucination. That'd be one for the paraphernalia. Tony?
Yeah, just going to say there's parallels with what you're saying and mindfulness and the Buddhist perspective that we were talking about earlier, and that through that you get this sense, this awareness that your thoughts are just thoughts, they're not real, you don't have to believe them, you don't have to get caught up in them. So yeah, I guess psychedelics potentially, technology, cyberdelics are a kind of a route or a gateway into that awareness.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add like one thing to this topic, and then I would like to also talk about the space and time travel.
Cool.
Like what strikes me about the psychedelic experience is that every time I have a profound experience, there are two main questions that comes up to my mind. Like the first question is like, these experiences are showing me that there is a possibility that there are parallel dimensions, that they're inhabited by other intelligent beings. If this is the case, then shamans have been telling us about the truth. If not, then if this is just a mere hallucination, then it shows me how powerful my mind is, because it can be tricked just by 2 drugs of DMT, and then you are convinced that this world exists. Then when you come back from that trip, then you need to question that if it's powerful enough to make you and convince you that those realms are real, then it might be convincing that this is real. So, coming back to the time travel thing, and I had like among some of my trips, like I had this idea came up to my mind, and I said like, the technology is growing really rapidly, and sooner or later, eventually, we will create a technology that will allow us to tap into the 4th and 5th dimension, which is time and space. And then once we achieve that, we'll be able to go back in the future, like back to our past and go in the future. And there's a possibility that maybe we achieve this, and maybe we have our future self guiding itself back in the 3rd dimension, and what we call as the instinct and follow your heart is actually your future self talking to itself in the 3rd dimension. And since it's in the future and it's able to see all the possibilities, it's communicating to you with the synchronicities and stuff. And I had this idea, and I shared it with Dr. David Luke, and he, without I didn't even tell him anything, he told me maybe it's your future self that you met. I was like, well, that was actually that came up to my idea, and I was just reading this book on Wednesday, and it's about like talks about different alien types, blah blah blah. And I was reading this chapter randomly. It's about a how do you call future humans, and I read it, and it was exactly describing what I felt about this idea. And what strikes me is that somebody from other part of the planet thought what came up to my mind. So it's showing either like there's a collective consciousness, or maybe this exists, or we are all just going crazy.
I don't know which one I'd imagine. Christina, would you like to? Yeah, go
well,
for it,
talk about time and space travel, because we were just talking about this. Because if you think time and space don't really exist, it's all here and now. Doing time traveling is just you're doing it by being conscious. You can choose like change your past by just being conscious.
How do you mean?
Well, when you're here and now, because as we said, like memories is not what actually happened,
Sure,
because usually our
memories were like a bit of a fabrication.
Yeah, it is. It's like
but
future.
Does that mean that actually changes your past, or?
Yeah, when you're conscious, when you're conscious, that it can affect your DNA, it can affect your physical body by being conscious here and now, because your energy flows with thoughts eventually, yeah. And if you're thinking of the past, you are in the past. If you're worrying about the future, you are like somewhere else. But if you're here and now, consciously, you can change your past. And the same with the future, because the future is the potentials, Okay. Everything's happening here and now. And the past and the future is here, all your past lives, all the future lives, it's all here and now. And by being conscious, you're choosing what you want to experience.
So we have control kind of over our destinies, past, present and future.
I don't really believe it's possible to go back in time in any way. I mean, you can look at historical records and you can watch videotapes or recordings, but I don't think you can actually go backwards in time. It's not possible for anything from the future to come back.
Why not?
Because of entropy and the second law of thermodynamics, which says that basically at a subatomic level, all things are becoming more and more disordered, and that is basically what time is that things have become more and more disordered. And interestingly, I just sat on some toothpaste, which is like the classic way of explaining why you can't go backwards in time, because you can't get that toothpaste back in the tube.
But what
it doesn't matter how many drugs you take, you cannot get, and I've never seen anyone do it.
I want to, let me just go back. Hang on, what your name is? Ignasa. Yeah.
So, like, I think it's very interesting reading a bit about many worlds theory. I'm very interested in becoming aware that the observer affects the outcome. This is true like in quantum experiments, that the observer affects the outcome of experiments. So I thought, what if life springing in this universe, and life knowing the universe itself, is a way of the universe basically multiplying its own possibilities. So basically, what we're doing is we're just, every time there's a binary option, and there's an observer, and now we have, at least in Earth, we have 7 billion conscious observers in humans, plus all the animals. We're just creating infinite number of parallel possibilities in multiple universes. And I think it's interesting to become aware of the very specific path you are taking, and be very proud of that very singular and specific one. And I like to think, because I've also had a similar thought that you had. The other day I saw an image in a movie that resembled a dream I had 20 years ago. And I thought, what if many of the things I'm experiencing now are just memories or dreams that I'm sending back to my past, kind of like intuitions of the future. And then I said, what if I concentrate on those new dreams? Like, could there be new interesting intuitions that are guiding me?
Hang on, wait. I'm just going to come to you, Hercules, first, because he had his hand up. But thank you, Ignatius.
I think time traveling to past is also possible. I mean, if you think about parallel universes and the infinity theory, when you go back, it basically spawns off a new parallel universe. That universe that you've just created by going back into that past is going to live its own kind of dimension.
So is it really going back in time then?
Well, it may not be. I mean,
yeah.
it may be. I mean, we could be living many different layers of different parallel universes, and each one would have different experiences of its own. So, and it could be a spawning off a new reality. In fact, some of the things that we do may change those, and spawn off new. Our reality completely, by us being here, even discussing, observing things changes reality.
So kind of like what Ignacio was saying about getting it like binary decisions, like quantum decisions, creating new strands of universes.
It fits in with the quantum theory.
Okay.
I think like going back to time travel, and since Ignacio mentioned the dream state, so for example, let's say that like there's a really interesting thing that like I've been questioning ever since I was a kid, is that when you dream, it feels super real and you're present in the moment. So if you're dreaming me and I'm chasing you with a knife, you will get scared and you will run away. But the thing is that you don't remember the beginning of that dream, neither do you remember the end of it. But like when you're in that moment, it feels super real. So once you wake up, you call it a dream, not because it's a dream, it's because you call it a ultimate.
Do you want to give us a final thought? Give us a final thought before you go. Go. Do you want to give us a final thought before you go? Yeah. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I'll come back to that though. The realness of dreams.
Every nanosecond in your life, there are millions of options you can take, and there are millions of parallel universes. For example, I can take a normal one by heading off to the Stratford Picture House, or I can stand up and punch you in the face, which I wouldn't do, by the way. That would cause another incident altogether, a completely different route. Millions of options every time you do something, and they're all parallel universes, basically.
It's just like Sliding Doors, that film. Yeah, if you any choice. Oh wait, we haven't heard from you. Do you want to hear from Yusuf first, because we haven't.
Following on with what you just said, you made a really salient point. A few weeks ago, I was in Holland and we were playing a game called The And. It's a card game between two players where you can change the rules at any time.
Okay.
Similar to what you were saying, based on the options that you've got. You ask someone a particular question, and they could choose to answer it, or they could choose to back out and substitute another player. So it's very interesting you kind of mentioned that. And I think that following on from what everyone pretty much has said, we live in a very interesting time in the sense that there's this growing awakening consciousness that, it wasn't so long ago we may or may not have been able to have this sort of conversation without being laughed at by everyone. But now, like, no one's laughing anymore. People are, we're at a point now where we've got this kind of growing kind of consciousness and realizing that this energy that kind of binds us and the universe together, is... Well, yeah, it's kind of binding us together, as I say.
The Force. And I'll come to Mikey.
So what I was going to say is that, like, the dream state is that there is no beginning or end, but when you're in it, it feels super real and it's your reality. So once you wake up, you call it a dream because you consider it the ultimate reality. But the similarities between dream state and this reality is that nobody remembers the beginning of life either. So like, no, you don't remember when your mom was giving birth to you, neither do you remember the end of your life. Let's assume that this is the ultimate base reality, then nobody in this reality knows the beginning of the universe. So like, there is no beginning or end, neither in this reality nor in your dream state or universe. So what I want to say is that, like, coming back to the toothpaste. So when you brush your teeth and go to bed, and then if you dream about that toothpaste being filled toothpaste, then that's some sort of a time travel already, because you don't know if this is real or dream state, and you wouldn't know if this is a real or dream state if you were dreaming about having this conversation. So even like the idea that you can actually imagine that toothpaste being filled again, I think it's some sort of time travel.
It doesn't seem just semantic. Or,
what is semantic?
Like wordplay, yeah.
I think there is a vast difference between dreaming and our waking reality, where there's so much more coherence within our experience in waking reality than there is in the dream state. And you can even be aware of your dream state, but I don't personally believe that means you're in control of it, but that you dream that you're in control of your dream. So it's just
talking
a
about
different
lucid
kind.
Dreaming.
Yeah, lucid dreaming is
like
not actually being in control of dream. It's like you're dreaming that you're in control of your dream.
Okay. So just to clarify, so you, in the same way that you can have a sensation of thirst, you can have a sensation of control, even though you weren't really thirsty, you weren't really in control.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm far more interested in lucid waking.
Yeah. Well, free will.
When we look at virtual reality, those experiences are sometimes more real than reality.
Any examples of that? I mean, I love the swirly colour stuff, but I rarely see the world like that.
Yeah, I mean, you could get a sensation of flight. You could, you could, so you can be in places where you wouldn't all possibly be able to be, in areas, and you could be on another planet. So it's like, in a way, you're traveling that time and space dimension through virtual reality. So those sensations do give similar sort of hallucinogenic effect if it's done properly.
Mike, actually, Lucy, you had your hand up a second ago as well, and I'll come to Mikey.
I think one of the interesting things about waking consciousness and dreaming is we seem to use different parts of our brains. And I've actually been in situations where I've had nightmares and I've actually woken myself up from the nightmare. Not the nightmare woke me up, but I've gone, I don't like this. I reject this. No, I don't like this. And I woke up and I was like, holy crap. And I was actually more wigged out by the fact that I'd woken myself up from the dream than how scary the dream was.
So this is kind of in slight contrast to what sort of Mikey was saying. What would your interpretation of that be, that Lucy woke herself up? Not that the nightmare did, but
I mean,
that she had control there. And
yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about dreams, that we don't have. I mean, I think we need to ask the question quite urgently: what is reality? And I would add to that we're all sharing this same reality, and that's really, really important. That's a really important thing. We're all in the same nightmare of Donald Trump that we can't wake ourselves up from, even though we want to be in control, or we feel like we're in control.
Can we be sure of that?
I can't be 100% sure, but I'm a lot more sure about that than I've got to get off of the train, but I can't get all the things into my bag, which is a common dream that I have.
Sounds like an anxiety dream. Moon, did you have a... Oh, sorry, you had your hand up. No?
No worries.
Okay. You want to say something anyway?
I guess it's really hard to judge, but personally believe in personal realities. So maybe there is the one, maybe there is more of them, but it's definitely just the way how you perceive it. So if it's positive, if it's negative, if the positive means the pain, if the negative means the pain, and if the positive means the happiness.
What do you mean? So you're saying that potentially there's a reality, every person has their own reality, or rather we're all NPCs, like non-player characters in your
I guess that's
reality right now.
I tried to say.
But does that not like diminish everyone's responsibility? Like
again, personal universe. So you've got your own bubble, and if you approach the other one's bubbles, it should be with a positive energy. That's what I'm trying maybe to say.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought what you were saying is like you're the only conscious entity or something. Yeah. Let me just get back to you and then I'll come to you.
I think one of my favorite quotes is that reality is defined by the mind that's observing it. So like, let's assume that this is the base reality and we are not NPCs, we are actually individuals. And so because of your brain and then because you have maybe more or less color pigments than I do. So like the way you see colors is different than the way I see them. So also like, and for example, I'm using language now. So my mouth is making small mouth noises that turn into words, that turn into language. And then I'm using English, which is not my native language. And it goes through your ear, and then it goes, you scan it and you analyze it and you filter it through your, a dictionary, and then it makes sense to you. But the way, for example, when I use the word love, it means something to me, and it's different to you. So when I say I love this, you actually, you don't feel what I feel. You feel you feel something that is based on your personal, experience, previous experience. So that just shows that reality is defined by the mind that's observing it.
It's a nice way of putting it. Do you, Ignacio, do you agree or disagree? Or have something else to say?
Like, I just want to drop some bombshells that I love.
Yeah, let's mix it up.
Okay, regardless of this is base reality or not, what is the purpose of it all?
What's the meaning of life?
No, not truly, because like I love thinking of this because it doesn't matter like how base or not base reality you go. There's a point where it's just ridiculous. There's a point where, like, my take again, and just to share and expecting some other opinions, or at least I was happy to think that again, life is a way of the universe knowing itself. And that's a good enough purpose for me. Like, you know, the universe was this very sterile place, and suddenly you have these agents that serve as a mirror for itself through life, through living sentient beings, conscious or not conscious. You know, like animals provide a certain degree of this mirror effect, and I'm happy with that vision in a level. But then again, regardless of how base this reality is, that definition might have or no sense. So I want to hear what is the meaning of life.
I think this could be quite interesting. Does anyone want to like add to this? Like, what do you have a purpose for it all?
I think we are like caterpillars striving to become butterflies. So I think that's that's really our purpose.
In the metaphor, what do the states mean though? You're saying something about life.
Well, I think our existence is about transcending this reality to the next level, and that transcendence process. Now we've gone through millions of years of evolution to arrive to this point to be able to transcend, to explore the universe through our, by the means that we create.
And that's enough of a purpose for you, just to...
I think that's enough. That's enough, hard enough problem to crack anyway.
Yeah. And let me just come to Tony first, because he hasn't sort of spoken in a while. And
I think it's mostly about connection, and just picking up the point about dreaming earlier. I just wanted to say daydreaming. So much of the time we're actually in our daydreams, we're distracted, we're in our own worlds, and it's those moments when we become aware that we're not present, and then we come back into presence and then connect with whoever we're with, or it's something in the present moment that brings us back, and it's that kind of connection that I think that's where we kind of find meaning and purpose.
Okay. Anyone else have a...
I think like the interesting thing is like if we let's assume that this is the base reality, but we live in a really interesting era where science is working with art, and as an animator, like I'm creating virtual reality worlds, and I'm also working with artificial intelligence, and one of my projects that I'll start working on is that we're going to create a virtual reality world, and we're going to put AI, artificial intelligence in there, and artificial intelligence sooner or later will be intelligent enough to maybe become self-aware, and now, so we have the technology now that allows us to create a cyber dimension and put intelligent beings there, and we can program them in a way that they are not aware of us, but whenever we want we can check into that world and interact with them without them knowing that we are their creators. And actually, like one of the works I made there, like that's Albert Hoffman, and when you use it with the app, it becomes alive. So maybe in the future, maybe in 10 years time, maybe it will be, there will be a cyber dimension where my characters will be, hanging out, but will they know that they're in a cyber world? Or
well, yeah, I mean, how do people feel about this, like about the idea of AI even conscious, let alone whether or not they, hang on, let's come to Mike after this bit first.
Like, what I find interesting is that even if that happens, if we create a simulation and we create like a simulated Earth or equivalent, then again, what is the purpose of this? Like, what, like I just love that. We're just running, we're just running in circles, and
I think that's a very good way of answering your first question, because you're then changing your perspective and saying, I made this universe, why did I do it? And maybe you can ask Batu why he's making that thing, and that might give an answer to why the universe, what the purpose of the universe is, should it be made.
I mean, I'm sure this isn't the case, but wouldn't it be depressing if it was just money?
Yeah. But I personally think there's an ethical issue here if you're going to create a artificially intelligent being and not reveal the mode and method of its and this one goes out to you, God, if if you do exist.
If God's on the airwaves.
There is an ethical element to this.
Okay, well, what's any further thoughts on that?
It just reminds me a lot of Rick and Morty. I don't know if you're familiar with this episode where the car.
Do you wanna tell people what
I won't tell it.
Like?
Rick and Morty is an amazing cartoon. You are missing something amazing in your lives right now. So go to Netflix and watch it tonight and enjoy it. But there's one episode that I won't even ruin. You just have to watch it. But you'll think of this. A universe created for a very specific and very dumb purpose. And then a universe within that universe created for a very specific but a very dumb purpose. Okay, and the point is, like, if you ask the Batu that created this universe, and you're like, why did you do this? And he's like, well, you know, like technology and art were merging, and I thought, you know, this is really cool. That's a really unsatisfying answer. And if you go to all the external layers, and you have different weird little answers like, oh, well, you know, a corporation hired me to see, you know, I give you one of my favorite thoughts of why life exists. What if we are AI agents? Because it's ridiculous to think that we're NPCs or individuals. No. We are AI probably, okay? So we are AI agents trying to solve a problem that the higher universe was too lazy to solve probably. And they were like, you know, let's just run this simulation and let's just make these billions of individuals solve it for us. And they were like, that's amazing. What amazing. Let's define love and let's have 7 billion people write poetry, create art, and let's see if we were like one of those. Like maybe it's something very absurd like that.
Well, that sounds like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Earth was made to solve a problem, and
I mean, in some way,
just give us a final thought. Hang on, sorry, let's get Christina's final thought. And Tony's as well, he stood up without us realising.
I'll probably say that all is well in all of creation.
All is well in all of creation. And Tony, do you have a final thought for us while you kind of escaped from us for a little bit there? Or are you coming back? Oh, you're back. That's fine then. Or is this a final thought?
No, I think my final thought was about the dreaming, really. We were talking about the lucid dreaming, the dream, that kind of, are we awake, are we not awake? This kind of that period when you wake up in the morning and you're not quite sure whether you're awake or not. But really, it's actually just, are we awake during the day, every day, when we're walking around, when we're seeing people, when we're talking to people? Are we really present? Are we really connected?
Kind of like what Mikey was saying earlier about lucid wakening, let alone lucid dreaming. Aliska. Yeah. Have you got a final thought for us?
Oh, no.
Oh, no? What about Ian?
Well, just that I've enjoyed listening to what other people have had to say. Excellent. So thank you all.
Brilliant. Thank you for coming. Moon?
I will definitely join. Thank you very much for all your beautiful brains and souls.
I like that. Hercules, do we have a final thought?
I'm thinking, well, we were talking about dreaming and like sleep. Do we need to sleep? Is it necessary?
Kind of almost touching back on the do we need to die sort of question from earlier.
But the reason that we asleep is because of, our bodies need to recover from the toxicity of the, day, passing through the day, and they've got to recover, and the waste, and, our brains has to kind of like, and our body has to get rid of those toxicity that is in our, and part of dreaming is that reprocessing some of the stuff that we've gone through the day, and it's a dreaming is sometimes byproduct of that process. Mm-hmm. But if we kind of change our biological self, maybe our purify our blood in a different way and nutritions in a different way, and process those toxicity out of our system without having to sleep. So would it be even necessary to then dream?
I'm curious to know what that would do to people, but one day. Lucy, do you have a final thought?
In some ways, the purpose of life is just life. It's that simple.
Self-definition, okay.
And I'm thinking that actually maybe it's a human arrogance to assume that there is some other purpose than that involves us.
We're not special.
Yeah, exactly. And that really, a lot of the problems in the world could be traced back to, especially the way we deal with the environment, could be traced back to us not wanting to admit that we are just tiny. We think we're in control of evolution, but actually, evolution is adapting us to the stuff that we're creating all of the time. So, who's in control, us or evolution?
Time will tell. Or unless we go back in time and screw it all up. Mikey, final thoughts?
I think evolution is a system that involves no control. I don't think there's a satisfying answer to why does the universe exist that anyone could imagine. And that goes back to the meaning. It's the wrong question in a way. In the past, we've attributed motives to the wind, the rain, and gradually we've kind of reasoned those out. And this is the only one left. But actually, what about if there's no reason? It makes us feel rather pointless and meaningless. But that's the open door for the next thing.
It could be kind of liberating. Anyway. Any final thoughts?
Like, since we mentioned, like, we talked about dreams, just like last week, I received a really interesting message from my sister. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Let's just roll with it.
And then she messaged me saying that, brother, I just woke up, and I woke up in a dream, and I thought it was reality, and I spent a couple of days in that reality, and then I woke up in my bed in Paris. She was like, what does that mean? I was like, you know what, I've been questioning that too. And I told her, like, yes, question everything. I think we should question everything while we're enjoying the martini. Like, enjoy the moment and care and love each other. Just because that this might not be the reality doesn't mean that it is not the reality. It's like you're still here. Like, when you touch it, it feels real. So enjoy it and question everything. But don't let your questions take over you, otherwise you will go crazy.
Definitely. Let's get our final thought from Ignacio, and then let's wrap up.
Don't panic.
Don't panic. And on that note, let's not panic. This has been Talkaoke. I've been your host, Rowan, and we'll see you tomorrow if you're around. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your weekend.